Sustainability, it's not a standalone discipline. It's not just environmental concern or regulatory checkbox. It's a fundamental shift in how we think. And once you understand that and internalize that, then we're ready to go. And so I think everyone just has to make that determination and say, okay, let's do this. There are millions and millions of project managers around the world. And if we all make that shift, we can solve climate change almost overnight.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar Project Leaders, Your Hidden Superpower in the Sustainability Revolution. This is Brightline's first transformation talk this year, and there will be more to come. There are a lot of things going on in the world right now, and an unprecedented urgency for sustainable transformation, specifically, I would say here. And we see that only 17% of the UN's SDGs are currently on track. So we from PMI and Brightline are continuously focusing on this very ever important topic of sustainability, trying to help executive leaders and project leaders to connect the dots between sustainability, creating impact, and at the same time also creating value in every sense. So today we'll talk about sustainability, and as I mentioned, the connection between value creation and project management, challenges and opportunities that leaders face when aligning sustainability efforts with strategic initiatives and projects, approaches to delivering sustainability impact through project delivery and stakeholder engagement. And lastly, also leveraging the intersection of sustainability and innovation to drive organizational transformation. The agenda is simple and straightforward. We have 60 minutes ahead of us. So followed by this very quick introduction by me, we'll listen to our keynote speaker, Joel Carboni. And after that, we'll loop in our other two speakers, Dave Garret and Taiwo Abraham, who will all give their perspective and insights on the topic. During this time, we'll also open up the floor for questions from the audience. And we'll finish it off at the top of the hour with some closing remarks from the panelists here and a call to action. That said, I think we can launch our first poll question. The question is, think of your most completed project. Was that project aligned with achieving measured social good? I think it's quite interesting here. Dave, I'll let you comment on that a little bit later on, but yeah, 50% said yes, and about 35% said no. It's strikingly similar to what I noted from our results in the latest project success research. So very, very interesting. Let's do the second question also. What is the biggest challenge in integrating sustainability into projects? Two or three, maybe four leading options here. First one, lack of leadership support, 21%. Competing priorities, second. And unclear goals as a third. That's really, really good. And I feel like that also aligns with some of the research and the insights that we've been able to uncover at Brightline Initiative. I will let Taiwo also comment on this later on whenever it's his moment. I'd like to move forward and introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Joel Carboni is a globally recognized leader in sustainable product management. As founder and president of GPM, he pioneered methodologies like PRISM and also P5 standard, and has shaped sustainability practices for 16 years. With 30 years of expertise, he has influenced corporations, governments, academia worldwide. He contributed to the UN SDGs and is a standards writer for Global Reporting Initiative on pollution. A Forbes.com contributor, keynote speaker, and visiting professor at Schema Business School. He was named 2024 Sustainability Leader of the Year by Change Leadership. Joel, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks, Emil. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening, wherever you are in the world. As Emil said, I'm Joel Carboni, and it's really a privilege to open today's session and to be here with Taiwo and Dave as well. It's a great title, Project Leaders, Your Hidden Superpower in the Sustainability Revolution. Um, the world is facing really a convergence of crises, climate change, biodiversity loss, social, geopolitical issues, inequality, and projects are at the heart of both the problem and the solution. Every initiative we undertake, whether building infrastructure, launching a new product, or developing a service, has an impact. Sustainable project management ensures that impact is not just minimized, but leveraged for positive change. Today's sustainability isn't just a competitive advantage, it's a survival imperative. In 2023, over 53% of projects were impacted by extreme weather events made worse by climate change. Now, that's up from 38% in just 2021. Think about that. Think about your own projects. Now, when you hear the words sustainability revolution, what comes to mind? Climate change, renewable energy, ESG reports, maybe even a sense of urgency, or let's be honest, a little bit overwhelmed? That can be normal because sustainability often feels like this vast, kind of complex challenge sitting somewhere out there, something for policymakers, scientists, or corporate executives to handle. But here's the truth. Sustainability isn't out there. It's right here. It's embedded in every single project that you lead. And I'm not just saying that to be dramatic. Let me give you some context. Now, some of you got an email to attend this session today. Talked about the 83% gap that was in the email, right? So right now, as we gather here, the world is off track to meet 83% of the UN goals. 83%. That's not just a stat. It's a warning. And it saddens me as I help write those goals. And I had really high hopes. I was actually on the working team for SDG number 12, responsible consumption. But to be clear, we're talking about goals related to clean water, affordable energy, sustainable cities, climate action, things that directly impact our lives, our communities, our future. And yet, despite global commitments, funding, and initiatives, we're falling short. Talking about funding, don't get me started on USAID, right? It's funding. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When people talk about closing that gap, they often focus on big picture strategies, government policies, corporate pledges, technological breakthroughs. But none of those things happen in a vacuum. They happen through projects. Projects are the vehicles that turn ideas into reality. You want renewable energy? That's a project. Sustainable supply chains? Project. Zero waste initiatives? Project. Even AI-driven sustainability solutions, you guessed it, projects. Which means project leaders aren't just part of the revolution, you're at the heart of it. The growing demand for sustainability talent, that's the kicker. Organizations are waking up to this reality. They're racing to embed sustainability into their operations, their cultures, their strategies. But in the last year, we at GPM did a study, and we researched over 10,000 project professionals from 113 countries, and we found that 70% of organizations do not have project management practices that align with long-term sustainability goals. 70%. Now think about your own organization. Think about it. Does your organization have practices that align with your long-term sustainability goals? Do you even know what they are? Are you part of that 70%? Or are you part of the 30% that's running fast? Well, do you know what they need to make that change? They need you. The global hiring for green skills is growing 55% faster than the overall job market. 55% faster. And that's not just a hiring trend, it's a signal. A signal that the world needs professionals who can integrate sustainability into projects, not as an afterthought, but as a driving force. And guess what? You already have the toolkit. Project management isn't just about timelines and budgets. It's about solving complex problems, managing change, engaging stakeholders, mitigating risks, all of which are critical for driving sustainable transformation. The difference, it's not about adding more to your plate. It's about shifting your lens, recognizing that sustainability isn't an extra deliverable, it's the outcome. Now, the challenge, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Aligning sustainability with projects, it isn't always easy. You're going to face competing priorities. Nothing new, right? You do that anyway. You'll encounter stakeholders who are resistant to change. Again, nothing new. You're going to navigate budgets seeming too tight to add sustainability. Again, nothing new. We do that always. But here's the thing. Sustainability isn't an added cost. It's a value driver. Projects that integrate sustainability tend to be more resilient, adaptable, and future-proof. They reduce risks, they create efficiencies, and open up new opportunities for innovation. And here's a secret most people miss. Sustainability challenges are leadership opportunities in disguise. Think about it. When resources are scarce, that's your chance to innovate. When stakeholders are resistant, that's your opportunity to engage, influence, and inspire. When the path forward isn't clear, that's when your project leadership shines, navigating ambiguity, making tough decisions, and delivering outcomes that really matter. The intersection of sustainability and innovation, now that's where the key is. We often think of sustainability and innovation as separate, like sustainability is about doing less harm. No, and innovation is about doing new things. But in reality, they're deeply connected. Sustainability challenges force us to think differently. How do we design products with less waste? How do we build supply chains that are both efficient and ethical? How do we create business models that are profitable and regenerative? The answers to those questions, that's where innovation lives. And as project leaders, you are the catalyst for that innovation. You're the ones turning bold ideas into reality, breaking down big goals into actionable steps, and leading teams through the messy, complex process of transformation. So what's your superpower? It's not just your technical skills. Those are important, but it's not just your ability to manage risks, timelines, or resources. Your superpower is your ability to create change, to take vision, turn it into reality, to navigate complexity, engage people, and deliver outcomes that really matter, not just for your organization, but for the world. And that's what this session today is about. How to connect project management with sustainability practices to create real value. How to face challenges and seize the opportunities that come with leading sustainable projects. How to deliver impact, not just outputs, not outcomes, but drive real meaningful change. So as I wrap up my quick monologue here, I want to leave you with this. You don't have to change the world. You just have to change your world. The projects you lead, the decisions you make, the influence you have, that's where the revolution begins. You have to help our organizations align their strategies for sustainability with long-term sustainability goals. There are learning journeys in PMI's Infinity that you all have access to that are free. And we at GPM are working with PMI right now on more exciting things to help close this gap. So I'm telling you, let's get started. And I'm looking forward to the rest of this panel with Dave and Taiwo. That's all I got. Let's go.
Thank you so much, Joel. That was really, really great opening, and we'll come back to many of the points that you talked about just now. But I wanted to continue and loop in Dave here to begin with. So we get the party rolling, right? So let me introduce Dave. As a senior advisor at Product Management Institute, Dave focuses on key projects that are important to PMI's mission and community. Formerly at PMI, Dave served as a chief strategy and growth officer, VP of corporate development and innovation, VP of transformation, and many other positions throughout the years. Dave has co-founded productmanagement.com in 2000 and also served as its CEO for 17 years. Dave, really great to have you with us. You've been involved in many things in the past year, and specifically on project success in 2024, where we've seen that those projects that are aligned with a broader societal benefit tend to be rated more successfully. Can you help us understand this better and elaborate on how this shift towards societal impact changes the way projects are planned?
Thank you, Emil, for the question. And Joel, thank you very much for the inspirational opening. I was reminded of our purpose as PMI as you were talking. We maximize project success to elevate our world. And this is all about elevating our world. It's not just about PMI elevating our world. It's about our community globally, every project professional out there helping elevate our world. So it's in our hands, and it's an important mission. As you probably already know, our project success metric that Emil was speaking to is perception-based. So we asked nearly 10,000 people, to what degree is your project on track to deliver value that is worth the effort and expense? And we asked for a rating on a 0 to 10 scale. And as it turns out, a little less than half of the projects, about 48%, were rated successful, with the rest either being a mixed result or simply failures. So we begin from a place of great opportunity, I'll put it that way. We gathered a lot more data on this sort of 55-question survey, and one of the things we asked was, is your project aligned with, or does it help with one or more types of social good, specifically the UN SDGs? And we asked if the impact was measured. And as it turns out, only 22% of projects had measured alignment with one or more type of social good. Only 22%, so 3/4 did not. But when they did align and were measured, the overall success score for that project was twice as likely to be perceived as successful. Twice as likely. So you double your chances of success by aligning with and measuring your sustainability or social good impact on the world. And this is a really huge area of opportunity. If you think about it, half of all projects are not successful. And then more than 3/4 of projects could double their overall chances of success through measured social good alignment. That's huge. I think it's a very motivating finding. And I think it shows our PMI community that we could really elevate our world in a meaningful way if we put our minds to it. And we try to offer a path to get there. And I think, P5, when I was looking at the poll earlier, we had unclear goals, lack of leadership support, all of that. Looking through the P5 standard, it gives you a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding about how you might go about measuring these things. If you need to kind of get up to speed as a project manager and understand the space itself in order to be able to manage up and able to engage leadership in a productive discussion about how these things might move forward.
This is really great, Dave. Can you also, before we move over to Taiwo, who's I'm assuming very eager to get part of this conversation. Can you also help us to understand why this connection between social good and project success exists? If you have any hypothesis about that, like why do we see this positive correlation between those two aspects?
Yeah, it's interesting. We really were racking our brains about this. Even 22%, that's a low number. But it almost surprised me that it was that high. Just in the current political climate and all of that, it's a tough place to be. But we definitely asked ourselves, why is there a connection between project success overall and sustainability? And we started hypothesizing. We said, okay, maybe it's because the project team itself is feeling more purposeful with their work. Maybe they're more motivated because there's a greater purpose they can keep in mind as they move through the project work. And I think that may be true, but we did a much deeper dive into the data to try to find something a little more substantive. And we found that when projects were aligned with social good and measured in the way we just described, this 22%, 55% of them delivered their target level of customer satisfaction. And then when projects were not aligned with social good, only 33% of projects delivered their target level of customer satisfaction. So if you think about standard business metrics, of course, we look at cost, we look at revenue, we look at all sorts of things. So customer satisfaction is a very common business metric that aligns nicely with sustainability. So if you have a sustainability goal, you're more likely to be satisfying your customers, more likely to have your customers view your projects and the things that you produce as good, as successful. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There's actually a tie between doing good and performing better as a business.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dave. Appreciate it. So without further ado, I'll introduce our third speaker here today, Taiwo Abraham, who is a corporate sustainability thought leader and strategist at PMI, currently advancing his expertise at the University of Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, with a PhD training specializing in sustainability strategy, 15 years career in project management, and certifications in sustainability and project management. Taiwo bridges theory and practice in organizational transformation and research. He's a regular speaker at PMI Global Summit events and has been honored as a PMI Future 50 Leader and Young Professional Excellence awardee. So, Taiwo, you're heavily ingrained in many other things that we have done, currently are doing, and will do in the future here at PMI and Brightline. According to some of our latest research with our business review analytic services, it was revealed that while 93% of executives acknowledge that sustainability is vital for business success, only 37% have actually integrated it into the core operations. So can you help us out to understand this? What are the key barriers that you're seeing in translating sustainability commitments into actual project outcomes in organizations?
Thank you, Emil, for being part of this. It feels great to be contributing to this topic alongside Joel and Dave. The question you asked is a very important question that touches a lot of the tension that we see out there, whether it's in research or in discourses in general public spaces. And where we need to start is to question data. We can boil down nearly everything we're talking about in sustainability to what data are we looking at that informs whether it's a priority, whether it's not a priority. How do we interpret the data when we don't even have the knowledge of what sustainability is all about? And so I am in the academic space, and we talk to professors who we expect to be leading charge on sustainability, and they tell you that, well, I really don't know about this. I haven't been incentivized to look into it, and so it's not my area of interest. Now, this is a knowledge creator who you expect to be leading conversation, who because of the lack of awareness of the imperative for sustainability, they are not looking into it. So on one hand, knowledge creators are not producing enough knowledge for the users. On the other hand, organizations have competing priorities in terms of short-term goal and long-term goals. And when you leave it to these to these corporate executives who are incentivized for short-term goals, then you see the kind of results we saw in the poll that we released earlier today. Competing priorities. How do we determine what should be priority? It boils down again to data. And so when we don't have good enough data, ROI measurement becomes a problem. And organizations will not just invest in sustainability because it is sustainability. It's still another business opportunity. And so there's got to be enough evidence, enough justification, enough validation of the hypothesis that sustainability indeed drives growth or indeed drives some business benefits. And so if we don't have enough data, if we don't have those who have the expertise to curate the data, then we leave the conversation on a shallow end that really cannot move the needle. What keeps organization leaders up at night? That is a question that we should be asking. And how does sustainability connect to that? Again, if you look at the poll that we just got today, support from leadership is missing. The question is, why should they support? What do we have to show them to make them buy into the agenda for sustainability? It comes back to data. So it's at the bottom of it all, it's data and the knowledge or the expertise to curate the data that informs leadership or informs action.
That actually makes me want to feel, it makes me think that I want to loop in Joel here and combine this segue with a question from the audience, from Elvis here. How can we get the top leadership in organizations to support sustainability initiatives? Because I think it's a mindset issue. This is more problematic in the public sector. Joel, based on what Taiwo mentioned here, and based on the question from the audience, what are your thoughts?
So let me qualify that. When you're saying top leadership in the organization, I don't know of an organization that doesn't value sustainability. The challenge is getting into the project organizations, right, and connecting those dots, because almost every organization values it. The trick is trying to figure out how to connect it between the organizational strategy and project delivery. And I've worked with a lot of organizations, and you'll see some sort of a sustainability disclosure, some sort of a report. And when you talk to project managers, we're like, do you contribute to that in any way? They're like, no, not at all. Well, do your projects align to it at all? No, not in any way. And our research, shows that. And so the important thing is, one, upskill the project managers, teach them about sustainability, and show them how it affects them, because materiality in project and sustainability reports should be including project work. Case in point, when you're talking about carbon emissions of any product that any company produces, when they're reporting on those, they always talk about when the product is produced. They never talk about the R&D or the product development part of it, or the project life cycle. So when that product is produced and they only report on the GHG emissions of that product, and they do not include the project life cycle, it's actually greenwashing. It's not correct. And any watchdog or NGO or any like the SBTI that's actually measuring that, if they call them out on that, they can be fined for that. And that's where the CSRD and CSDD regulations in Europe are going to start looking at that more closely, going, wait a minute, you're reporting these numbers and they're not correct. And that's why I've been talking to PMO leaders, and they're starting to get really scared about this. We have to start making those dots. So to answer your question, these leaders will start making those connections. And that's why we have to start preparing today to be ready to answer that call. It will happen. And unfortunately, regulations are going to make it happen. But we have to be ready. So start having those conversations internally, saying, it's coming. Are we ready? That's why we're talking about it today. We have to be ready.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Joel. Want to also shift to you, Dave, here, because I feel like we're talking a little bit about providing the business case and then also perhaps the mindset in organizations, right? So can you elaborate a bit on the things we've found in the project success research, and perhaps connected with Pierre Lemon's vision and broader vision for the future of project success, and how that relates to sustainability?
Sure, sure. It's interesting. For years now, we've heard a lot from project managers about feeling undervalued. They talk about, if we're successful, somebody else gets the credit. If we fail, it's all on me. So that's an unfortunate thing, and I think it's one that historically we've sort of taken as a given. We've sort of said that's part of the life of a project manager, and many project managers just sort of put their heads down and focus on execution. And it's really, I guess over the years, PMI has also supported that by incrementally focusing on advancing the profession. And Pierre has recently introduced a broader vision for the profession, which is really interesting. It's focused more on the success of the projects themselves than it is the profession. So project success versus project execution, or project management success, he sometimes refers to it as. And this vision is really a call to action known as MORE. MORE is an acronym that has implications for the profession, but also for the sustainability of the work that we do. It's sort of taking a broader perspective, taking a step back, and creating more understanding, yourself about how you can approach these things, but also helping others create that same understanding, looking at it through a sustainability lens. The M in MORE stands for manage perceptions. So, people perceive of project success differently than just by looking at the data. If data told the whole story, you would just present the data and it would be calculated and no human being would be involved in the determination of success. But that's not reality. Every single project stakeholder is going to have a perspective on that, a human layer outside of the data that says, this is my experience, these are my knowledge, my biases, everything that plays into my assessment of whether or not this thing is a success. So when I was talking about the numbers earlier, that was based on perceptions, that doubling the chance that someone would say your project is a success because of the value you're delivering overall, including sustainability. So for these stakeholders, I think having a relationship with them where you can understand what their perceptions are, and then be able to shape those perceptions over time with elements of sustainable value, and that kind of thing is important. The O in MORE is about ownership, owning project success, owning the success of the thing versus just the execution. And I think there's an element of that in the long definition that has to do with minimizing waste. So the piece about waste is particularly important from a sustainability perspective. I think Joel kind of mentioned that a moment ago in his answer. And I think ownership of that makes a difference. Ownership of the project makes a difference. So when you leave your house, you turn out the lights, right? Because it's your house. If it's your responsibility to do that, it's no one else's. It's similar to when you feel ownership of a project, right? You feel a responsibility to make that happen. Then the R in MORE is for, and this is kind of long, so bear with me, relentlessly reassess project parameters. So it's going back and taking a look at where you're headed and saying, is this the best way to get there? And I think constantly checking in and iterating gives you more opportunity to insert sustainability into your project work. There's always new ways of doing things, new ways of approaching a problem. And I think there's opportunities and points in time where maybe at the beginning of the project, it wasn't the right time to do that. But as you're moving through it, you'll find a point where, hey, we need to add some value here and we could easily do it with X, And so you can insert that in and make it happen. I think staying open to these ways of meeting the intent of the stakeholders and sort of reshaping the value that the project is delivering is really helpful. And finally, the E in MORE is expand your perspective. And I was talking about, a project manager often focusing on the execution of their project. The idea there, generally speaking, is I want to be aware of the impact my project has on other projects, on the organization, on the world, right? So when you expand your thinking like that, you sort of pull the blinders back and you say, my thinking is, like this instead of like this. It's easier to relate to upper management, and kind of and talk to them about the bigger picture, because you don't have to just sound like you're talking about strictly about sustainability. You can also talk about the strategy and how we're going to satisfy all these organizational needs, including CSR, ESG, whatever you want to link to there. So I think it's an important concept, not just for project managers and their personal growth, their ability to be recognized for their contributions, but it's also important for their contributions to sustainability.
Thank you, Dave. We'll stick on the topic of mindset, but shifting project success to transformation context instead. So, Taiwo, I want to ask you a question before we jump to Joel again. How can project professionals overcome the organizational resistance in sustainability initiatives, especially when we're thinking about the conflict between short-term and long-term priorities that exist? So perhaps you can spin off on what Dave was talking about here with the MORE framework.
Good. I think this is where we come in as project professionals. And I can reference an experience I had in a recent organization that I worked with, where we delivered something that has a major sustainability impact, but the conversation didn't start because we wanted to do sustainability. We were talking about something that was of business concern. We are an IT organization, and we do a lot of projects for the government. But then if you raise the question of sustainability, it easily would be met with skepticism as regards why is this an important thing for us. But then we talked about data security, and data security is so critical to the work we do, to the profit we make, to the responsibility or stewardship that we owe to our clients. And so that was something the organization threw all of its weight behind. But in the process of establishing standards around data security, we needed to take care of many other sustainability concerns around labor issues and all these other sustainability issues that we typically would not prioritize. So it boils down to what we call materiality in sustainability. The concept of materiality is understanding what impact that your action has on the environment. And if you consider the double edge of materiality, where you can look at it from inside out and outside in. On the inside out view, you're asking, what is the impact of the work that I'm doing or the project that I have been assigned on the environment, on the society, and maybe on profit of my organization? And on the outside in view, you could also be asking, and this is responsible, this is moral, and this is being diligent at your job to ask the question of, how does the external risk from sustainability impact my project? How does climate change affect my project? How does societal risk affect my project? And when you combine those two views, you begin to build a business case for sustainability on your project. And at that point, you're not approaching a senior executive just saying that, hey, sustainability is an important conversation, let us talk about it. You're telling them that in our business interest, there are sustainability concerns that we need to be addressing in our project. And then you have an opportunity to collect data that can inform executive action, and just right there, you begin the process of strategy formulation. As an individual, you will not be able to do much without getting the executive backing, especially on projects where we have tight constraints around budget, schedule, and scope. For you to step outside of that, of those constraints, there's got to be some approval. But how do you secure those approval? Provide information on material impact of your project and what cost that could be to the organization, or what that could cost the environment, and hopefully that is enough to stimulate the decision that we need.
Excellent. Thank you, Taiwo. We'll continue on this. I just wanted to read out something I thought was very thoughtful, written by Elvis here in the chat. It's very critical to understand the intersection between ability, acceptance, and authority when introducing sustainability initiatives. What is the value proposition, and who holds the ultimate authority? So, we're very well said. It goes back to what we've been talking about in the past couple of minutes here. But Joel, based on what Taiwo mentioned, and also related to what you posted here in the chat to some of us, can you elaborate on some of the frameworks and tools that project professionals can use to put this in practice? And can you also perhaps blend in the idea of regenerative development?
Yeah, sure. That's a kind of a big mix there. So GPM has developed tools. They're free. I'm not selling anything to you guys today. And a lot of them have been integrated into Infinity, so they're at your fingertips. Our P5 standard it's a free tool. It's designed to provide the elements that kind of complement the SDGs. The SDGs were designed as kind of beacons as to what the problems are, and they outline what needs to happen. They don't tell you how to address the root cause. So the P5 was designed to tell project managers, here are the things to look for, and here's how to address them in projects. Here's specific things you can work on, and if you do it, here are the benefits you can realize, and here are the SDGs that directly tie them to. So there's that. It's free. It's on our website, gpm.org. You can go to that and find it. It's really easy to find. So there's sort of the how. Then we also have the competence framework that you can download as well. So there's competencies for sustainability leaders and also for project managers on what the competence units are, the performance criteria of what you should be able to do, what you should know, and what you should be able to do based on that knowledge. So those are free resources at your fingertips. In PMI Infinity, there are 2 learning journeys that are available to you for free if you're a PMI member. One is on how to use the PRISM methodology, which is sort of the framework that we've developed on how to deliver a project sustainably. And 2, the other one is about ESG and project managers. So those are available. It's AI-led, so there's a little bit give and take, but those are tools available to you. We also have templates. The Sustainability Management Plan, which is a tool that plugs into your project plan. Now, there's been some questions about how do you get buy-in, how do you get support from your leadership. I think Dave talked a little bit about, we're the ones that are, always asked to take the lead, and where we get in trouble if things go bad, but when things go right, we don't get talked about. So here's the thing. With sustainability, our job is to get the job done. And so in a project, you take a look at the impacts, based on the P5 standard, you understand the impacts, you develop a plan, you put it in your project plan, you score it, you get the buy-in, you take action, you get it resolved. These templates help you do that. So those are free at your fingertips, available right now on our website. You can take them right now. So those are the tools. When it comes to regeneration, here's the thing. Sustainability means literally to sustain, right? Keep as is. Who wants that? Things are bad right now, right? I mean, look at California. On fire. Well, it was on fire. Still not good. We have extreme heat. We have sea level rise. We have problems, right? Had we gone back to the 80s, sustained where things were back then, okay. But right now, we don't want to sustain where we are right now. We have to go back and regenerate. Humanity needs to be sustainable. That's our goal, is to be sustainable. So sustainability as a movement, that's what we're working on. So we have to look at the sustainability movement and actually practice regeneration. So it gets a little bit tricky. So there's been what's called pressure waves over time. Going back to the green movement in the 60s and 70s and sustainability in the 80s and 90s, and now it's regeneration. And so we have to actually go forward and restore, regenerate ecosystems so we can actually be sustainable as humanity. And that's kind of what we have to do in our practices. And that's really the key. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot, understand.
It's a lot.
But I think we're also approaching that point in the webinar here where we might want to be a little bit more future leaning. So I'll give you another question, Joel.
Sure.
From a research perspective, what emerging areas or unexplored aspects of project management and sustainability should we be paying more attention to? This might be the area that we just talked about, but I just want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, the emerging areas really are strategy. We say that project management is strategic, project managers are not. And I find it interesting that we talk a lot about AI, and I was on a session a few weeks ago. We talked about what AI is going to do for project managers, and people are talking about, it's going to take away our jobs. It will, in a sense. What it's going to do is take away the kind of things that keep us bogged down, and it's going to free us up to do the things that are really important, like answer the questions that executives need to have answered, to take on the really heavy things that need to be done, and to focus on the really important things to solve the big complex problems. And so it's going to make our jobs a lot more important to solve heavy complex issues. And that's really exciting. I think it's going to help us elevate our profession to be even more tactical, even more important. And so I think when it comes to sustainability, because it is such a big, heavy thing to do, you're looking at everything from child labor to ESG emissions to everything in between. It's a big, hairy monster. It's not just climate change, it's everything. And so when you're tackling that big of a challenge, you have to have a big plate. And so when you take AI and you throw it into the mix, it can take away some of those remedial tasks and give us the ability to tackle big things like sustainability. So I think that's where it's coming into play. And it's perfect timing to me, I think.
If I may come in, Emil.
Yep.
Talking about timing, you prompted me there, Joel, to drop something that we see in research across time on projects. It's how projects have transformed over the years, that we started out from an era where we understood the goal and they were fixed, resources were abundant, the processes were predictable, and we could measure the success of project within the triple constraint of time, cost, and scope. But then things started to change to when we really cannot talk about the actual outputs. We now needed to be talking about capabilities, but the process of arriving at the capabilities were kind of fuzzy, and so we started to lean on the iterative way of doing projects. But at this time, resources also were becoming more and more scarce. And at that point, we started to think about how do we get creative at resources, and this actually elevated project management as a profession. But we're transitioning to another era now where resources are nearly not existent, underscoring the imperative for regeneration, like you just said. But we also are seeing a new kind of projects where the completion of a project is not the end of the problem we're trying to solve. And so projects are becoming like bite-sized kind of responses to grand challenges in society, where delivering an initiative that solves some climate change problem does not make climate change at a global level to go away, but it takes something away from the bigger problem we're trying to solve. And so when you get into that space, how do we then measure success? So this builds a case for what Dave has been talking about, that what PMI is doing about reframing project success to making success measuring success based on the perception of stakeholders. And that takes us right to the heart of sustainability, that we are catering to stakeholders today and stakeholders tomorrow. And if that's what we want to do, we need to understand what we're doing from the perception of stakeholders. So going back to materiality, how does my project affect a broader group of stakeholders that I have to manage, or that have touch points with my project? And how do I ensure that the project does not harm them, and that the project does not take anything away from future generation of stakeholders? And that's where I want to leave the conversation today, that stakeholder-centric view is very critical to sustainability.
I love that. I love the bite-sized solutions to grand problems. Is it? I can't remember that last part. That's amazing. I think, Emil, is it okay if I drop an answer in here as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Playing off of what both Joel and Taiwo have been saying, I think, well, for one, the way the profession is evolving is the reason we have more, the MORE thing that I just went through. It's a more expansive view. You're more business partner than you are taskmaster at this point, So I think that's a really good transition from a career perspective and from the way that you add value perspective. And Joel was talking a lot about AI, and I think he's absolutely right. It takes away some of the administrative activity and then makes space for doing more. And while it does that, it also helps provide some of the answers that you might need in order to do that. You might be looking for, how might we measure the sustainability of this, this or that. Joel mentioned a lot of his materials being a part of Infinity, which can be very helpful in that regard. So I think that's a big help. There's actually a lot that you can dig into there. When Joel, when you were talking earlier about greenwashing, having someone come in and sort of say, or being able to tell your superior or the executives that you're talking to, there might be, if you don't do X, I understand, this is how we can measure sustainability on my project. And my fear is, we might be looked at as greenwashing if we don't do this, right? If we don't show this part of sustainability. I think AI is a great place to find actual examples of that. So if you go to your boss and say, here, I've got an example I just wanted to tell you, sort of as a cautionary tale, here's what happened to ExxonMobil, or here's what happened to, company X that looks like ours. I'm not pushing anything really hard, but, I just want you to be aware, that this is happening out there in the world. I think that's a really great, if you use Perplexity or something like that, something that's very good at sourcing, you can find sources and examples like that to leverage. And I think lastly, Joel, you mentioned becoming sort of involved, that there are groups within your organization, likely, around ESG and CSR, who are setting goals, who are doing things, looking at things at a macro level. If you're involved in those groups, then you understand the opportunities from a project perspective. That plus a lot of the materials, in the chat, I dropped in the sustainability course that we partnered with Joel on a little while back, and a lot of the materials that hang off of that P5 and others can be super helpful in getting your head around what's possible. And then just being active in your organization with the people who are trying to make that possible is another key. So I think all of those things are really helpful.
Thank you, Dave. I want to give all of the three of you one last word or piece of advice that you think everyone in the audience here, or organizations or project professionals in general, should do in order to position themselves in a better way to become sustainability leaders. Joel, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think let's go back to Superpower, right? It's about connecting the dots. Sustainability, it's not a standalone discipline. It's not just environmental concern or regulatory checkbox. It's a fundamental shift in how we think. And once you understand that and internalize that, then we're ready to go. And so I think everyone just has to make that determination and say, okay, let's do this. There are millions and millions of project managers around the world. And if we all make that shift, we can solve climate change almost overnight. And that's why this is up to us as project managers to make it happen.
Great, thank you. Taiwo?
Yeah, the sequence of progression that we need is first knowledge, awareness. That drives us to understand the imperative for sustainability. But once we know that, it helps us to also know what are the levers that are available to us to make meaningful impact. And that is where I believe action lies. So above all else, I think we're doing the right thing here, disseminating knowledge, and I think we should all continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, any last words?
Yeah, just quickly, I think those answers were outstanding. Those are really important things looking forward. I want to mention more again. Obviously, manage perspectives, ownership, owning the project, relentlessly looking at project parameters and adjusting as needed, and then expanding your perspective. All of those things super important. And I'll just throw in here. There's a question in the chat from Maina Mpoyo. I know I'm pronouncing that inaccurately. I apologize for that. But she was asking about expanding perceptions and saying, waiting for the regulation to force us to be sustainable. How do I get past that? And I think it's through leveling up, through doing more, trying to take on ownership of the project. And an extension of that is owning the larger problem for your organization, being part of that group that drives things forward. And just adopting more, sort of broadening your perspective and getting out there and making things happen.
Thank you. Thank you for your delicate answers and considerations. We need to wrap up. We're over the hour. And sustainable transformation is such an imperative and that needs to be urgently addressed. And also an immense opportunity for all organizations and professionals, project professionals. So I would just say, end it off with that the cost of inaction is simply too great if we don't act now. And it starts with you, practitioners, to help us connect that dots to Joel's point. So I hope everyone found this discussion very insightful and actionable, giving you some ideas and tools for what you can bring with you in your work. There are some resources that has been shared to everyone here from PMI and also Green Project Management, our great partner. Thank you so much, and have a great day ahead.